My name is Satin, and I hate my father. He took away the closest person in my life. And until a week ago, I thought I was the happiest 17-year-old girl in America. I live with my dad. That's what I decided a year ago, when he and my mom divorced. I've always had a great friendship with him, and I could share everything with him. He trusts me a lot. With my mom, we also communicate, but because of her desire to control my every move, we're not really close. But it was not a big deal for me because I had Tyra, my best friend, and at the same time, my roommate. We had known each other since we were in diapers, and I couldn't imagine my life without her. Tyra was the soul of the company, and we were always having adventures together. And most importantly, Tyra was very supportive when my parents split up. Often, she would stay up late, cooking dinner for me and my dad. And when my dad, Tyra, and I sat at the table together, talking and laughing, I was the happiest person in the world. It's so cool when the two people closest to you get along perfectly. And everything was perfect until that fateful message that I happened to see. You'll find out what was in the message in a minute. But in the meantime, please subscribe to the channel and click on the bell. There are many more interesting stories ahead for you. Before I reveal the mystery of that post, a few words about the boys. Tyra and I were 17, and of course, boys were one of the main topics of conversation between me and her. Tyra wasn't really interested in boys of the same age. She always said she wanted a real man, not a snotty boy. But I had to finish high school and get into the university I wanted, and then I could look for love. Those were Tyra's words, and I liked her attitude. But for a couple of days now, I'd had the strange feeling that Tyra was like she was hiding something from me. Usually she is cheerful and loud, and now she shuts herself off, stopping coming over in the evening. To all my questions, she just waved it away with a joke, which scared me even more. One day during recess in class, there was a text message on Tyra's phone, which was on her desk, and before she could grab the phone, I read, "Miss you, waiting for tonight," and a smiley face with a kiss. Are you seeing someone? I couldn't take it anymore. Why aren't you saying anything? We have no secrets from each other. Tyra blushed and, hiding her eyes from me, whispered that she has no one. It's just an annoying admirer. And after class, Tyra jumped up like crazy and shouted that she had a dentist appointment and ran off. So there is someone after all, I thought. But knowing Tyra's temper, I knew it was useless to ask. The evening was boring. After watching Wednesday on Netflix and eating a big bowl of ice cream, I went down to the kitchen. It was almost midnight, and my dad wasn't here yet. He was working too much. I poured a glass of milk and looked out the window. I could just see Tyra's house from it. Her kitchen. There was a light on. Can't sleep either, I guess, I thought. A shadow flashed through the window, and then another. Strange. Tyra's mom was on a business trip. Who could be out this late at night? I just clung to the window. Suddenly, Tyra's kitchen light went out, and I saw a shadow on the porch. It was dark, and it was hard to tell who it was. A few minutes later, Dad came in the house. When he saw me, he froze. He asked why I was awake, smiled absent-mindedly, and hurried to his room. There was a strange feeling inside. I couldn't understand. Tyra, that shadow, then Dad, his strange smile. The next day at school during recess, I dragged Tyra to the far corner of the hallway and pinned her against the wall. Tell me about it. You have someone, and that someone is coming to visit you late at night. I saw it all. Tyra clenched her teeth, parrying calmly. If you saw it, why do you ask? I'm surprised you're still talking to me. Tears glistened in her eyes, and I felt sick with what I realized yesterday. But I didn't want to believe it. But everything was piecing together into an ugly right puzzle. For a couple of weeks now, Tyra and my dad had been out late on the same days. Dad upgraded his closet, buying several pairs of jeans and sweatshirts to look fashionable. And Tyra was wearing more aggressive makeup to look more grown up. And this was all happening right in front of me. Realizing all of this, I hissed. "How could you, Tyra? He's my father!" I've never hidden the fact that I'm interested in grown men, Satin. And yes, I like him, but there's nothing between us but harmless late-night conversations and holding hands. In a couple of months, I'll be an adult, and he and I can date openly. What about me? There was a loud cry coming out of my throat. And you're a big girl, and you're about to fall in love too. Your father has every right to be happy, Satin. So do I. But I didn't hear those words. I ran home. They betrayed me. The two people closest to me betrayed me. I hate them. I'm going to pack my things and go to my mother's. That's it. I collapsed on my bed and cried. Tyra's words wouldn't come out of my head. He's entitled to happiness. After calming down a bit, I saw 15 missed calls on my phone. From Dad. Tyra had told him, and he's worried. And I don't know what to do. What would you do? Would you accept your father's choice and let him be happy? Or would you cut your two closest people out of your life? Please write. I really need your advice. My name is Charlotte. I'm 15, and my life is like a fairy tale. I am the only child of a very rich family. We have a big real estate business, and I am the heiress who is going to get a big stake in our company. I know for sure what the rest of my life is going to be like. Everything is already planned out, and I love it. School, university, practice in my company, and in a couple of years, I will be my father's right hand. But yesterday, everything was turned upside down. And now, my family hates me. Why did this happen? Here's my story. So, it was a normal workday. I was at school. My driver would bring me in and take me home all the time. But on this day, something went wrong. There was a big accident downtown that caused a traffic jam, and the driver couldn't get there on time. I couldn't wait because there was a birthday party for my mom at home that night. I called a cab. An old, shabby car pulled up. And my first impulse was to just turn away from the trip in such a clunker. But time was working against me. So I settled carefully in the back seat. And behind the wheel was a young guy who smiled at me with a cheerful smile and nodded his head. "Hi, half an hour and I'll take you to the right address." The guy wouldn't stop talking, and we laughed a lot. Ethan, the cab driver's name, was incredibly witty. He made jokes about the neighboring cars, the traffic lights, and even about himself. Laughter made tears come out of my eyes like a hailstorm. And then suddenly, he said a phrase that made me feel uncomfortable. You'll find out what Ethan said in a minute. But now, please do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And make sure you click the bell so you'll know when there's a new video on the channel. Suddenly, Ethan said, "You've already wet my seat with tears. How am I going to sleep now?" I'm sure it should have sounded like another joke. But it was the opposite. I asked him again, "Why does he have to sleep in the car?" And with a sad smile, Ethan said that he didn't have a home, and that the car was his only shelter, and that he'd been living like this for 2 years. I listened with bated breath. I couldn't believe there was such a thing in the 21st century. And all because Ethan's parents, when they were very young, got addicted to drugs. And a couple of years later, they died. And the child was placed in an orphanage by social services. Ethan ran away from there at 16 and has been living on the street ever since. And this car is his only treasure and source of income. And he got it by accident from a friend. His story stunned me. I felt a huge lump in my throat. I felt so sorry for the guy. "There's your house. Here we are," Ethan suddenly said as he stopped in front of the gate. And somehow I felt ashamed. I'd always thought that people living on the streets were the scum of society. Drug addicts, alcoholics, those who deliberately drove themselves to such a life. And then there was this guy. Clean, neat, and obviously not stupid. Something changed inside me. And I suddenly exclaimed, "Come with me, Ethan." I grabbed him by the arm and dragged him into the house. I was in the middle of preparations for my mother's birthday party. The hall was drenched in flowers, and light, unobtrusive music was playing. The waiters were running around like crazy, setting the table. Ethan was shocked by what he saw, and I was uncomfortable. My mother floated out to me in a gorgeous dress, as befitted a birthday girl. "Darling," she said, "hurry up. You need to change your clothes and get ready. The guests will arrive any minute." "Mom, I want you to meet Ethan," I blurted out. Mom looked the boy over from head to toe, and it was only now that I noticed how poor he looked. Yes, Ethan was wearing clean clothes, but his shirt was stitched up in places. His jeans had holes in the knees, and it was clearly not a fashion decision. "Daughter, the job opening for an assistant gardener is still open. But no one will do it now. Come back tomorrow, young man." Oh, I felt so ashamed. Mother thought that Ethan came to apply for the gardener's job? Mother, Ethan is my friend, and I've decided to invite him to the party, I said firmly. Suddenly, my mom grabbed my elbow and pulled me into the dining room. Ethan was still at the door. "Get him out of here right now," Mom hissed. "My guests are about to show up, respectable people, and this bum is ruining the whole picture." Oh, how angry I was at those words. I didn't expect that from my mother. "I'll get out of here myself, so as not to spoil your fun." And I stepped back into the hallway, but Ethan wasn't there. Oh no! I ran outside, and I realized that he was gone. He knew he wasn't welcome here. I went back into the house, and ignoring my mom, I ran to my room. I was so angry. How dare she treat people like that? Who gave her that right? I pulled out my suitcase and started throwing my things into it. "I'll get out of here. I'm getting out of here, and I'll never come back." After a minute, I rushed to the door, but it was closed. I pulled the knob again, and I heard my mother's voice. "Sit here and think about your behavior, Charlotte. You are grounded until tomorrow." And here I am, a rich heiress, sitting locked up in my room because I wanted to help a good guy. And knowing my mother, I would have to apologize and tell her how wrong I was to make it up to her. Or I could just tell her to go to hell and get out of here. What would you do if you were me? Would you choose wealth or humanity? Please write. I want your opinion. Hi, I'm Martina, and I'm getting expelled from school. It's all because of this one guy. I'm in a lot of trouble. Listen to me and decide for yourself whether I should be expelled or not. I've always been a good student. My mom used to tell me it was better to get my brains pumped than to rely on a pretty face. And I always remembered that advice. And instead of having my own love affairs, I was listening to hot stories from my friend Margaret. She liked to fool around with guys, and she'd do them any way she wanted. If she liked someone, that was it. She wouldn't stop until that guy was hers, even if it was just for a couple of days. I went out with her after school one day. We lived in the same neighborhood, so we usually walked home together. It was raining that morning, but the sun was shining now. We turned the corner, and then something happened that would change our lives. You'll find out what happened in a minute. But now, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And make sure you have the bell clicked. Then you'll know when there's a new video coming out on the channel. All of a sudden, a car dashing around the schoolyard at full speed and drove through a puddle, poured water on us, and Margot got more water on her. The driver's window popped open and a guy looked out. "Excuse me, ladies." "Asshole, I'm soaking wet!" Margot screamed, but no one heard her. The car sped away at full throttle. Margot was furious. She promised to take revenge on the bastard at any cost. The next day, there was a surprise waiting for us in class. It turned out that the guy from the car had moved to our school and would be studying with us, Juan. That's how he introduced himself to the class, and then suddenly looked at me and winked. Why all of a sudden? But I didn't have time to think about it. Because at recess, Margot dragged me to the bathroom and started whining that Juan was super hot, and she wanted to make him fall in love with her, and that he must have deliberately doused her with dirty water from the puddle upside down to draw her attention to himself. I didn't dare argue with Margot, much less say anything about the look on Juan's face. Good thing she didn't see it herself. Juan was a hard nut to crack. Nothing could make him fall in love with her so easily. Not her super short skirts, not the bright lipstick that made even me tingle, not the murderous looks she threw at the boy in the dining room, trying to sit so that she was always in his line of sight. After a couple of days, Margot began to throw a tantrum. Her plan to win Juan over was failing. But I kept getting signs of attention from him. A look at me during recess, a nod in the cafeteria, a smile in the class. I didn't react in any way, and I was terribly afraid that Margot would notice. My friend was more important to me than any guy, even a hot one like Juan. It was Friday. Margot, after lessons, ran to the hairdresser, and I decided to go to the school library. I had to do my biology report for Monday. Suddenly, I got a message. "Come to class, we need to talk. Margot." The number was unfamiliar though, although Margot was always the one who kept forgetting things. Once, she forgot her cell phone somewhere, so I was not surprised by this message. I went into the classroom and saw Juan. "Did you text me?" He nodded and smiled. "You're always hanging out with your girlfriend. You're like Siamese twins. So I had to cheat to talk to you alone." Juan came up to me. "I like you. It really turns me on when you ignore my signals." Juan grabbed a lock of my hair with his hand and wrapped it around his finger. But I don't give up that easily. He leaned dangerously close to my face, and I felt the warmth emanating from his body. The shivers ran through my body, and all my thoughts disappeared. "Juan, what's going on here?" That loud voice made us both jump. It was Principal Hernandez. "Juan Hernandez, shall I repeat the question?" The principal stepped towards us, and then it was like I was struck by a bolt of lightning. "Hernandez? Is that your mother?" Juan barely nodded in response. I was shocked. Everyone knew that when she was angry, Principal Hernandez was ruthless, and now it seemed like steam was coming out of her ears. "Get away from my son! Tomorrow with the parents in my office. This kind of behavior is unacceptable in school. And you, Juan, go home and do your homework." And she walked off down the hall. Juan immediately grabbed his backpack and disappeared. My knees were shaking. I remembered a similar story 6 months ago. The principal had caught a couple kissing in the cafeteria. She expelled them both. And now, the same fate awaits me. But nothing happened. Juan came on to me. But how can I justify myself? All I have is a message from him, signed in Margot's name. Oh, if Margot found out that Juan had paid attention to me, our friendship would be over for sure. I'm in trouble. What am I going to do now? Juan won't get kicked out of school. But I will. What would you do if you were me? Write it down. See if it helps me. My name is Norma, and I'm in a rehab for teenagers, and no one cares about me. A month ago, I had a whole army of fans on social media. And back then, my name was different. Everyone went crazy when they heard that name. But it all came crashing down in 1 minute. And now I'm one step away from a terrible... It all started when I was 10. My mother started taking me to different castings, as I was very beautiful and the camera loved me. I starred in a few commercials, promoting a cool yogurt and vitamins for kids. Then I got a portfolio, and I tried my hand at modeling. And then, a year later, at 11, I got my first serious contract with a modeling agency. My mom bragged about me in front of everyone, and it was awesome. She rarely praised me. And here I was, finally the center of her attention. At 12, I was offered a small role in a soap opera, and I loved it. Even more than the modeling business, where there is terrible competition and strict conditions. You have to keep the same weight, the skin must be in order. It wore me out. Not once or twice I fainted from hunger. But I really liked to participate in the shootings, and I liked the director of the show. He said that I was a born actress and it is necessary to develop the talent. My mom paid a fortune so I could study with famous teachers. I quit school, and all the time I devoted to acting. It's a lot of work, I'll tell you, but it was a resounding success. There was an audition for a new series for teenagers, and I was suitable for the role of the main character. I was so excited. Shooting was exhausting, but I got used to loads of work, so I sometimes survived a 12-hour shooting day. And something happened that just blew my mind. You'll find out what happened in a minute, but for now, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And make sure you have the bell clicked, then you'll know when there's a new video coming out on the channel. I started my first ever romance with an actor who was also on this show. His name was René, and he was French. I was crazy about him. At night, René and I would hang out, and I was on set all day long. To keep up with the frenetic pace, I lived on energy drinks. The series was a success, and after it came out, I woke up as a superstar. I got a personal PR manager who came up with a new-sounding name for me, Genie Blue. I loved it. And then an endless series of interviews, photo shoots, presentations, brand collaborations. Sometimes I don't know if it was day or night, when I ate my last meal or slept. The schedule was insane. René was jealous of my success. We started fighting. My PR manager gave me lots of antidepressants. At first, they helped. I have signed contracts for new films. A promotional tour of the country began in support of the series that made me famous. Everyone loved Genie Blue and longed to see her live. And I increasingly in the evenings staying by myself in a huge hotel suite, buried in the pillows and cried from fatigue, from loneliness, from resentment. René spun an affair with another actress, and the tabloids have long relished it. Antidepressants stopped helping me. At the height of the promotional tour, I was so exhausted that I just could not get out of bed to attend another appointment. My mother showed me the contract, explaining that if I did not comply with the conditions, I would face huge fines, and they would refuse to work with me. She dressed me herself, did my makeup, and took me by the hand to the appointment. Everyone applauded and chanted, "Genie! Genie!" But I didn't care. As if in a fog, I saw Renee hugging some second-rate actress. That was the last straw. I ran to the bathroom, opened a jar of antidepressants, and swallowed a handful of pills at once. I do not remember what happened next. Vaguely, somewhere very far away, I heard my mother's voice calling for help. Then, the sounds of the ambulance, the smell of medicine, my mother crying. I spent 3 days in the hospital. My scandal was quickly hushed up, and I was sent to a rehab for adolescents. It's a kind of sanatorium, but with a strict schedule for patients. I would have to rest here, to recover, to cure my nerves and to start my life anew. My body was extremely depleted because of the frantic schedule. So the doctor said, and my nervous system could not take it. Every day is scheduled. Yoga classes, breathing exercises, a session with a psychologist, a walk in the fresh air, and no cell phones or gadgets. I'm on a full detox here, physical and mental. My mother came today. She visits me almost every day. She's happy that I'm okay now. We were sitting and chatting, and suddenly she put a folder on the table in front of me. I became alarmed. "Honey, you feel better now, so I decided to tell you. They didn't cast you out of your contract. They just postponed the shooting. And in a month, Jeannie Blue, everyone's favorite teenager, is going to be on set. Isn't it great?" Mom was almost jumping up and down with happiness. And I was afraid to go back. In the rehab, I feel calm and good. The real world was very cruel to me. But here I am, a shadow, some Norma, unknown to anyone. And there, still a superstar. And I don't know what to do. I'm afraid of falling off again. What would you do if you were me? Would you agree to go back? Write in the comments. I really need your support right now. Hi. Well, you don't want to know my name. It's not safe. But you'd better listen to the end of the story that happened to me. You also need to subscribe to this channel because there are tons of great stories to come. So, I grew up to be a very smart kid. And by the time I was 12, I had passed all my high school exams and I got a high school diploma. My parents were very proud of me, especially my father, whom I rarely saw. It was all because of his job, but my mother kept it a secret from me. Dad always brought me strange presents from business trips. A microphone in the form of a bug, a lockpick for any door, a night vision device. And when he saw my diploma, my dad asked me to pack all my presents in a backpack. An hour later, we pulled up to a huge glass structure downtown. Dad pulled out his badge, put it on the reader. The doors opened, and we quickly stepped inside. It was a school, but an unusual one, a spy school. And my dad had brought me here to study. I was absolutely thrilled. It turned out that my dad is a secret agent. That's why he was long gone on business trips. And after showing my results on my studies to the director of the School of Spies and at the same time his best friend, my dad got me an invitation to study here. And I began an interesting life. I studied here for 2 years. I learned to communicate fluently in 5 languages, learned different coding for messages, got excellent physical training, and many other skills, from which I was wildly delighted. I even managed to fall in love with one guy, Sebastian, who was the best in the course. And there were not only strong feelings between us, but also fierce competition. Everyone wanted to be the best. But suddenly after Christmas, Sebastian didn't show up at school anymore. They said it was for family reasons, and there was no point in asking around. Everything was top secret. I was too busy studying to forget about the guy. 2 years of study flew by like a day, and there was a real task waiting for me as an exam, to track down a criminal. The Phantom, that was his name. In 3 months, he had managed to rob 10 of the biggest banks in the country. And each new crime was so perfect that neither police nor intelligence agencies could do anything. I was given access to the Phantom case, tons of information to study. I stayed up for a week reviewing each of his crimes, realizing that the Phantom had a weakness for rare jewels. I created a fake news story to pique his interest. I came up with the idea that there would be an exhibition of jewels in town. Among them, the Queen's most expensive tiara. And until the exhibition, the tiara would be kept at the General National Bank. The news was set in motion. The bank's management was aware of the planned operation to capture the Phantom. The exhibition was 1 night away, and I had one and only one chance to catch the Phantom. It struck midnight. The bank was quiet. Just the guards and me. Outside, a team of agents was waiting for my signal. It was like time had stopped. An hour passed. 2 hours passed. I began to lose hope. It was probably a bad plan, and the Phantom didn't care about the ring. And suddenly, what is it? I heard a sound, and a shadow flashed in the hall. Oh, is it him? Stop right there! I jumped out of my hiding place and pointed a small pistol loaded with sleeping darts at the dark figure. Suddenly, the figure threw off its hood, and I heard a soft, painfully familiar voice. "Hello, little one. Long time no see." And then Sebastian grinned cheekily at me. "You're the Phantom?" I exclaimed. Sebastian crossed his arms and stared at me calmly, and there was a mute question in his eyes. "And what are you going to do, kid? Are you going to turn me in?" And I did not understand who was in front of me. The criminal whom I must apprehend, or the beloved man with whom not so long ago we kissed until morning. If you're wondering what I did, subscribe to the channel and set the bell. A sequel to the story will come out soon, and maybe it will end happily ever after. What would you do yourself? What would you choose? The person you love or the thing you love? Write it in. I'm interested in what you think about it. I'm Sandra, and this day has taken 2 people I love away from me at once. I'm in total shock right now. I never thought this could happen to me. Billy and I started hanging out recently. I hadn't really noticed him before. We were just friends. Hanging out, that's all. But this summer, Billy changed a lot. I hadn't seen him in a couple of months because he was staying with his grandmother. And when I ran into him on the street, little pimply Billy was gone. Now he was a handsome, tall guy with a stylish haircut. Wow, I thought. And I could date him now. I wouldn't be embarrassed in front of my girlfriends. At one of my friends' parties, I had the nerve to take Billy's hand. That's how we started dating. And we were good together. We were in different cities. And Billy was a year older than me. We didn't stress each other out much. Billy came over to my house after school. We'd hang out in my room, watch shows, make out. It would have been okay if it hadn't been for my brother Steven. He was a couple years older than me, and we were always at odds with each other. He's been bullying me since I was a kid, because he was forced to babysit me when I was a baby. And he got back at me using every opportunity he could. A powerful slap from Stephen was always in lieu of a greeting. He ate my morning cereal to spite me, and he also managed to tie the laces of my sneakers, which caused me to fly headlong across the threshold more than once. And hiding my backpack, putting salt in my tea, planting a big artificial spider in my bed, it was always Stephen who found new ways to get on my nerves. He was in his senior year, and I couldn't wait for him to go off to college. And life would be beautiful. I tried to complain to my parents once, but Stephen became even more cruel in his taunts. So I had patience and just waited for him to go off to college. When Stephen found out that Billy and I were dating, I was expecting another round of heckling, but he didn't react at all. He hadn't seen Billy in months either. And when the stylish, grown-up, and now my boyfriend showed up on our doorstep, Stephen had kind of quieted down. And good. Billy and I would lock ourselves in my room, and no one would bother us. One weekend, my parents went to the lake for a vacation, and Stephen and I stayed home. I decided to have a romantic evening with Billy and me. I cleaned my room, bought some goodies, found a good show on Netflix, and ran to get my nails done. Billy and I were supposed to meet at 7 p.m., and I hinted to him that my parents wouldn't be home all weekend. Billy nodded back. He was always a little shy, but I am okay with that. I went quickly home from my manicure appointment at almost 7 to get my makeup done. And when I entered the living room, a surprise was waiting for me. They were watching a basketball game on the big couch, and they were laughing. Who it was, you'll find out in a second. But now, please subscribe to the channel and put a bell. There are many more interesting stories to come. Thank you. So, on the couch, my Billy and Stephen were laughing their asses off. I was a little shocked, and Stephen quickly moved away from Billy. As you can see, my romantic evening was ruined. The guys watched the game until late at night, and I freaked out and went to my room. I came downstairs in the morning, not realizing I'd run into Billy in the kitchen. "What are you doing here?" I exclaimed. Stephen came in and smiled, telling me that they'd stayed up late last night, and Billy had fallen asleep in the living room. I thought Billy was going to apologize for last night, and he and I would go on a date somewhere together. And we did. We went to a movie theater to see a hard-hitting action movie, which I can't stand, the three of us, with Stephen. And the amazing thing was that Billy suggested it. On the other hand, it must be cool that my boyfriend was friends with my brother, I thought. But I couldn't stand Stephen's company at all. Billy and Stephen didn't seem to notice me either. At the movie theater, they were discussing the movie amongst themselves, crunching their popcorn loudly, and I was pissed so much. The weekend was ruined. On Monday, during the third class, I felt a headache, so I asked to go home. I opened the door with my key and immediately went up to the second floor. I thought I would go to bed, but I heard music coming from Stephen's room, and the door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to see Stephen, who was whispering something in my Billy's ear. What the hell was that? I couldn't help myself and I opened the door sharply. Stephen blushed and jumped to his feet. Billy almost jumped away from him. I was like, oh no. I didn't even want to think about it. It couldn't be. My brother and my boyfriend? They were silent. I locked myself in my room, not knowing what to say. I mean, it was all upside down. Maybe I was imagining it, but in the last few days, Billy's attitude towards me had changed, or was it all in my head? What do you think? Please write. Help me understand this situation. It's a strange story, and if it hadn't happened to me, I never would have believed it could happen. But I'll give you the details that will convince you that I'm not lying. Most importantly, watch to the end. I'm 14 and everyone calls me Camille. Only my father affectionately calls me Cammy, and I'm his favorite daughter. Even though he has with Sandra, his wife, 3 other children, she's a beautiful woman. And I wish she were my biological mother, because I know very little about mine. Dad used to tell me the same romantic story about the young beauty Melinda, whom he saw under the dome of the circus and fell in love with her. He used to tell me about their short but passionate love affair, in the end of which I appeared, and about how one circus performer was fatal for a talented aerial gymnast. Yes, my mother died when I was a baby. But my dad's boundless love and his newfound wife Sandra's care for me gave me a happy life. It's like a fairy tale, isn't it? And I thought so, until I discovered the terrible lie they were hiding from me. It's a secret, I'll tell you in a minute. But for now, please subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click on the bell so you don't miss new and interesting stories. We lived in a wealthy area of London, and I went to a private school with my stepbrothers and sister. Since I was a little girl, I lived in a beautiful, luxurious house with servants. And at school, all my friends were also from my circle. My father used to tell me that our family had its roots in the old aristocratic Stoughton family, and that we should be proud of it. Remembering my father's story of my grandfather's exploits in the war, I walked down the school corridor, smiling to myself. Lost in my thoughts, I turned the corner and almost knocked down the cleaning lady. "Oh, sorry, I did not see you." I quickly apologized. The janitor smiled warmly in response. "It's all right. I'm supposed to be inconspicuous." And then she hurried on with her head down. Her answer stuck in my head, and I surreptitiously began to observe the woman. Neat, in uniform, always busy doing something. It was obvious that she was working very hard. Apparently, she valued her work. A couple of days later, I noticed her again in the corridor. The woman was wearing watering flowers. "How can I help you?" I tried to say it as gentle as possible. She nodded and glanced at the big ficus on the window. "Hold it down, miss, please." I refill it with fresh earth. I held out my hands, and suddenly, the woman was like seeing a ghost. With eyes round with horror, she looked at my wrist. I saw tears on her face. Covering her mouth with her hands, she shook her head. "No way! This is impossible!" Crying, the woman ran away. I felt sick to my stomach. Yes, I had a big heart-shaped birthmark on my wrist. But that was no reason to react so harshly. I didn't see the cleaning lady for the next few days, and the story began to fade away. But suddenly on Friday after school, I came out of the classroom, and then I was abruptly grabbed by the hand and dragged. After a couple of minutes, I found myself in the staff room. The cleaning lady stood in front of the door and looked at me with tear-red eyes. "Listen to me, child." For a couple of days I hesitated, doubted, but finally decided to tell you everything. "Let me out, or I scream!" I felt uncomfortable at the pressure of a stranger with trembling hands. "I will not hurt you. Never. Show me your wrist, please." "Stop it! Have you never seen a birthmark?" Suddenly, the woman holds out her hand to me, and just below my elbow I see a birthmark just like mine. "I'm your mother, Violet." The woman started sobbing. "Is this some kind of a joke or something?" I waved my hands. "Stop it! My name is Camille, and my mother is dead." But the woman wouldn't let up. "He stole you from me. Bloody Stoughtons! They couldn't allow their precious son's wife to be poor and earn her money in a traveling circus. My daughter! I'm alive!" I couldn't listen to it. I pushed the crying woman aside and ran out of the back room. The driver was waiting for me on the street. Half an hour later, I was already sitting in my room, trying to calm down. What was this all about? Why did she call me Violet? How did she know my father's last name? And what am I supposed to do with this information? As I got older, I was surprised that my dad didn't have any pictures of my mom. I didn't know what she looked like. And my grandparents never wanted to talk about her at all. It was as if everyone wanted to forget her quickly. Even Sandra, Dad's wife, got lost when I started asking questions. It disturbed me, and after what I'd heard today, it all made more sense. I looked at my birthmark and wondered what to do. Should I ask my father? What if it's true? Then my whole life would turn out to be fake. I was stolen from my mother. They took her out of my life. They gave me another name. Do I want to hear the truth? What would you do? Would you reveal the bitter truth? Or live in a beautiful rich lie? Please let me know.